They say that, long before he ever bore a crown upon his brow, there lived a knight whose lance had never tasted defeat. His name rang out among castle stones and rustled through forest leaves. Afonso, the knight of the valiant lance. But who was this man of almost mythical strength, who tore through the veils of fate with each sweep of his blade? Today, we shall part the mists of time to unveil the true story behind the legend. We will discover how a young nobleman defied his own bloodline, braved seas of steel and fire alike, and traced with steadfast hands the outline of a new nation. Portugal, prepare yourself, for between the haze of legend and the light of history, we shall walk side by side with a hero who never ceased to fight. Before he was ever called king, Afonso was simply a youth forged in the storms of the northern Iberian Peninsula. Raised amid battlements and battlefields, his destiny seemed etched from the cradle. Still a boy, he was knighted, an act that, to many, was no mere formality, but a portent. Even then, the troubadours whispered that his lance would never hesitate, as though guided by forces beyond human grasp. Outside the legends, however, reality was harsh. Young Afonso was the son of Donna Teresa of Leon and Henry of Burgundy, nobles of high lineage. After his father's death, his mother took charge of the county of Portugal, yet her political alliances, especially with the Galician noble Fernão Pérez de Trava, caused deep unrest among Portuguese barons. Thus began the conflict that would forge Afonso's legend. In 1128, on the field of São Mamede near Guimarães, the knight set himself against the troops of his own mother. Picture the scene: two kindred forces facing one another beneath a leaden sky, where mud and blood mingled like ink, poised to write a new story. That day, Afonso wielded his lance not against a foreign foe, but against his own origin. It was a rite of passage, an inevitable sacrifice to transform the young heir into a sovereign leader. By winning the Battle of São Mamede, Afonso not only defeated Donna Teresa, but symbolically severed the bonds that kept him subordinate to Galicia and Leon. In that moment, there emerged not merely a new lord, but the spark of a new nation. And it is said his lance, yes, the very lance that never faltered, seemed to gleam with its own light upon that battlefield, as though a higher destiny were being driven into the earth. Yet Afonso's consecration as true sovereign still faced storm-tossed seas. Though many recognized his leadership, it was not official in the eyes of neighboring realms nor of the church. Something grander was required, something that neither men nor heaven itself could deny. Amid the uncertainties of the fledgling realm came the moment that would etch Afonso's name beyond scrolls and song: the legendary Battle of Urique. Fought in 1139, the setting was forbidding. Afonso led his troops through hostile lands while vast Muslim forces gathered to halt him. What could a newly freed county do against the might of Al-Andalus? It was like a handful of torches trying to withstand an oncoming storm. Historians debate the details, yet the tale carried through centuries speaks of something deeper, closer to the divine than to the mundane. On the eve of battle, alone in prayer, Afonso is said to have received a celestial vision. Christ himself, radiant and awe-inspiring, appeared and promised him victory, along with the destiny of founding a nation dedicated to the Christian faith. That night, it was not merely a king who was forged in the darkness of his camp, but a living legend, sealed by eternity's touch. When dawn broke over the fields of Urique, bringing sweltering heat and the scent of iron in the air, Afonso raised his lance, the one already sung of as invincible, and marched at the head of his men, not as a noble seeking glory, but as a sacred knight entrusted with a mission that transcended life and death. The battle was brutal. Shields splintered like shells beneath sword blows. The ground shook with charging horsemen. In the heart of the storm, Afonso pressed on, carving through the enemy as though each thrust sketched Portugal's unseen frontiers. And while blood soaked the soil, the promised vision seemed to guide his movements, rendering him untouchable. By day's end, Islamic banners lay strewn upon the ground, and the name Afonso Henriques echoed as that of an undefeated warrior. Inflamed with fervor, his soldiers acclaimed him king there and then upon fields stained with blood and glory. He would no longer be merely lord of the county of Portugal. He would be Rex Portucalensis, the first king of Portugal, and the lance, that same lance, came to be seen not just as a weapon, but as an extension of his soul, his courage, and his unbreakable faith. People said the very will of heaven dwelt within it, and that while Afonso brandished his sacred blade, Portugal would never be subdued. Thus, between legend and historical fact, a new kingdom arose, destined to alter the fate of the Iberian Peninsula forever. After being acclaimed king, Afonso Henriques did not rest upon his laurels. He knew that a title without recognition was as fragile as a sandcastle before the tide. He had to consolidate his rule and win independence in the eyes of vigilant Leon and of the ecclesiastical lords of Rome. On this chessboard of power, Afonso revealed not only the might of a warrior, but the cunning of a sovereign. Like a lance that both pierces and traces precise lines in the air, he mapped out alliances and hostilities with masterly skill. He dispatched diplomatic missions to the Pope, seeking recognition of Portugal as an independent realm free from Leonese vassalage. Such negotiations were arduous, years of veiled struggles, letters sealed with wax, promises murmured beneath the veil of politics and faith. While diplomacy unfolded in invisible corridors, the fight on Portuguese soil was palpable. The young kingdom pushed its borders ever southward in continuous battles against Muslim forces. Afonso, his lance now a near-national emblem, led expeditions beyond the Mondego, seizing towns, razing fortresses, and consecrating churches. Each conquest was more than territory. It was a tile set into the grand mosaic that would form Portuguese identity. Whenever his figure appeared on the battlefield, mounted, bearing the cross standard, and that lance gleaming in the sun, soldiers felt part of an epic greater than their own lives. Among these campaigns, one of the most symbolic was the capture of Santarém in 1147, achieved through a daring nighttime assault that caught Moorish defenders unawares. The city, key to controlling central Portugal, fell through courage and ingenuity. Soon after, with aid from crusaders bound for the Holy Land, Afonso led the famed conquest of Lisbon, securing the heart of the rising realm. Yet papal recognition, which would render everything official before Christendom, would still be slow in coming. Only in 1179, with the bull Manifestis Probatum, did Pope Alexander III acknowledge Dom Afonso Henriques as the legitimate king of Portugal. It was as though, at last, heaven and earth agreed on what had already been written in blood, sweat, and faith. They say that upon receiving papal confirmation, Afonso glanced at his old lance, now more symbol than weapon, and smiled. It was not merely an extension of his arm, but of his will, his faith, his vision. And even in old age, he carried the unconquered spirit of the knight who once dared to break with all else to found a new world. Looking back on his path, it is impossible to separate man from myth. Every step of Afonso Henriques seems to resound. more powerfully than the simple beat of the centuries. His story was carved in the stone of reality, yet gilded with the gold of legend. And so Portugal was born, not from a gentleman's agreement, but from the blazing passion of a knight who never flinched from driving his lance into the very limits of the possible. Between fact and fable, Dom Afonso Henriques stands as a pillar of Portuguese identity. He was king, knight, living legend, but above all, the architect of a dream. His lance, symbol of strength and faith, was not only a weapon in bloody battles, but the visible manifestation of an indomitable will to conjure from nothing a new nation. History might have forgotten him as just another medieval lord, lost among castle intrigues and faded treaties. Yet the fusion of fact and myth engraved his memory for eternity. The vision of Christ at Urique, the painful break with his mother. At São Mamede, the conquests that seemed guided by a higher force, all these compose the portrait of a hero who transcends time. Today, nearly 1,000 years on, we still feel the echo of Afonso's footsteps across Portugal's mountains and valleys. His spirit lingers in the stone of fortresses, in the language that flourished, in the traditions that endure. And just as his valiant lance once etched the first lines of the kingdom into the air, so we still bear the invisible mark of his courage. Perhaps we shall never know how far legend beautifies or conceals reality. Perhaps it does not matter. For, in every generation that lifts its head with Portuguese pride, the true story of Afonso continues to be written. And you, who have walked with us on this journey between myth and truth, are likewise heir to that legend. Share your thoughts. For you, was Dom Afonso merely a great king or something more? History lives on, if one knows how to look. If this tale has made you see Dom Afonso Henriques with new eyes, share this video with anyone else who needs to discover the roots of this living legend. Tell us in the comments, which moment in Afonso's Ihari life seems to you most touched by destiny itself? Subscribe to the channel and keep traveling with us through stories where myth and reality intertwine.